Okay, we have our test this Friday. It's the second EOCT practice test, and we've been working on these questions for the last 2 weeks. So hopefully everybody will do well on this. It also counts as a benchmark test, so this will be a test grade. Question 1 says, in triangle shown, segment HJ is parallel to segment GK. The following shows a proof of the statement. If a line is parallel to one side of a triangle and intersects the other two sides at distinct points, then it separates these sides into segments of proportional length. The question says, which reason justifies step 2? So you want to look at step 2. Step 2 says angle HGK, so let's mark that, is congruent to angle IHJ, so we'll mark that angle. And then it says that angle IKG is congruent to angle IJH. So we look at the angles and we see which one justifies those angles being congruent. A, alternate exterior angles are congruent. Those are not alternate exterior angles because they're not on different sides. B, alternate interior angles are congruent. Again, they're not alternate because they're not on different sides. C, corresponding angles are congruent, and if you look at those are corresponding angles because they are in the same positions. So C would be the correct answer. Number 2, the spokes of a bicycle wheel form 10 congruent central angles. The diameter of a circle formed by the outer edge of the wheel is 20 inches. What is the length to the nearest 0.1 inch of the outer edge of the wheel between two consecutive spokes? So if we mark our picture, this is our diameter. It goes all the way across, and that's 20. And if we want to find the length between the outer edge of two consecutive spokes, what we're wanting to find is that. So we go to our formula sheet, and we need to find the distance around the circle. So that would be circumference, C equals D times pi, which would be C equals 20 pi. And since we want to find the length of just part of that circle, and the circle is divided into 10 congruent central angles, we would divide by 10. So that's going to give us 6.3 inches. Number 3, triangle ABC is shown. What is the value of cosine A? Again, we want to go to our formula sheet. And the formula sheet says that cosine of theta is adjacent over hypotenuse. It's very important that you mark the A in the triangle. So I'm looking at angle A. So adjacent to A would be 4, and the hypotenuse would be 5 because it's the longest side. So the answer is going to be 4 over 5. So that would give us answer B. Number 4, in the triangle shown, ABC is dilated by a factor of 2/3 to form triangle RST. Given that TR is 12 centimeters, what is the length of CA? So I would mark TR is 12, and I would put X for CA. There's lots of ways you can do this. One way that I like to do it is I like to use proportions because the triangles are similar. So I would set up my proportions, and I would say 2 is to 3 because that's my ratio, how it's dilated. And I would put 12 is to X. I would put 12 as my numerator because it's in the smaller triangle, and that's with the smaller number 2. And you cross multiply, that would give me 36 equals 2X, and divide both sides by 2. So X gives me 18. You could also work this one by dividing 12 divided by 2/3. And that would also give you 18. Number 5, what is the end behavior of the graph f of x equals negative 1/3 x squared minus 3x minus 10? I know since it's squared, that's going to be a quadratic. So my graph is either going to go upward or downward. I also know since it has the negative, my parabola is going to be reflected, so I know it will look upside down. Therefore, it would have to decrease on both ends. So I would find the answer that says decreases and decreases. I would know it would never be increase and decrease, so those were out. Number 6, each letter in the alphabet is written on a card using red ink and placed into a container. Each letter of the alphabet is also written in black ink and placed into the same container. A single card is drawn at random from the container. What is the probability that the card has a letter written in black ink, the letter F or the letter G? So I know that if I have in the container, I have letters A through Z in red. And I know if I also have the letters A through Z in black, I have a total of 52 cards. So if I want to know the probability of choosing a letter written in black ink, I have all 26 of these. And then I also am going to have the red F and the red G. It would be in the probability also. So that would give me 26 plus 2 would equal 28 over 52, which is going to reduce to 7 over 13 because they're both divisible by a factor of 4. Number 7, what is the vertex of the graph f of x equals x squared plus 12x minus 1? To me, remember the vertex is going to be your minimum point or your maximum point. Since this one's positive, it's going to be a minimum point. To me, the easiest way to do this is to go to your calculator and go to mode 7 and make a table. All right. Most of the time, we begin with -5 and we end with +5, and we step 1. All right. The only problem is all of these numbers, our x values, our domain values, are not going to be included in that. So what we need to do once we don't see our minimum or maximum value, then we need to change our mode start and end. So I would go from -10 to 0 and see if you can find your point there. And what happens is you end up seeing you've got -10, -9, -8, -7, -6, -5. And you put those numbers in there. So when I get my calculator, I go -10, -21, -9, -28, -8, -33, -7, -36, -6, -37, -4, -5, -35. Now, the first thing I notice is that I do have this point here. All right. Also, remember that your vertex is going to be your axis of symmetry. So notice, this should be 36. Notice that you have -36 on both sides, so that would have to be your vertex point. Number 8, which expression is equivalent to the cube root of 125 x to the 5th, y to the 4th? The first thing I know is that B and C will definitely not be the answer because the cube root of 125 is much smaller than 125. So I need to choose here. Remember that your root is always your denominator. So you know that you have x to the 5th over 3. All right? And you're going to take y to the 1/4 and multiply by the 1/3. So that's going to give me 1/4 times 1/3 is 1/12. So that would make D your answer. Number 9, in right triangle HJK, angle J is a right angle, and the tangent of angle H is equal to 1. Which statement about the triangle HJK must be true? So I would draw a triangle because a picture always helps. I know that J is at the right angle, so that can be H and K at either one of the acute angles. All right. If tangent H equals 1, I know that means that opposite over adjacent is equal to 1 by looking at the formula sheet. And the only way I can get a fraction to equal 1 is if the numerator and the denominator are the same number. So I'm just going to make it simple, and I'm going to say the opposite of h would be 1, and the adjacent to h would be 1. Now to find the hypotenuse, I would need to find a squared plus b squared equals c squared. So that would be 1 squared plus 1 squared equals c squared. 1 squared is 1, plus 1 squared is 1 equals c squared. So 1 plus 1 is 2. So to find the value of the hypotenuse, I need to take the square root. So the hypotenuse must be the square root of 2. Now let's see which statement is true. Is sine h equal to 1 over cosine h? Well, sine h is opposite over hypotenuse, so that would give me 1 over the square root of 2. And 1 over cosine h would be 1 over, cosine h is adjacent, so that would be 1 over the square root of 2. And that would not be equal, they're not equivalent. So if I look at b, sine h is opposite 1 over hypotenuse, the square root of 2. Cosine h is adjacent, which would be 1 over the square root of 2 for hypotenuse. So that would be equivalent. And number 10, the cone has a base with a radius of AB. The length of AB is 3, and the length of BC is 5. What is the volume of the cone? To do that, I need to look at the formula sheet for my volume formula, which is V equals 1/3 capital B times H. Now remember, capital B is the area of the base, and in this case, my base is a circle. So I need to use my circle formula. Pi equals r squared, so that would give me pi times 3 squared, which is going to give me 9 pi. So if I go back over here to my formula, I would say 1/3, capital B is 9 pi. Then I multiply by h, but 5 is not h, 5 is the slanted part. So again, I've got to use my Pythagorean theorem, which is a squared plus b squared equals c squared. So we could say a is 3 squared, I need to find b, equals 5 squared. So 3 squared is 9, plus b squared equals 25. If I subtract 9 from both sides, it's going to give me b squared equals 16. So take the square root of both sides, so b equals 4. So I know my height is 4, so I can put that in for h. And if I multiply 1/3 times 9 pi times 4, that's going to give me 12 pi.